Welcome to the Standout Agency podcast for agency owners who want to grow, not just survive.
I'm Gareth Healy. I'm an ex-agency owner and author of Stand Out or Die. I help agency founders see where they're still a bottleneck in their own business and make sure they do something about it.
And I'm Callum Healy. I find where agencies are losing hours to manual work and then build AI systems that get the time back.
Each week, one of us interviews the other on a subject related to agency growth. Everything we get into comes straight out of our own experience and client work. Occasionally, we bring in some guests to add their expert perspective on a topic.
Welcome back to the Standout Agency podcast. This is episode 8, where not to use AI in your agency. I think it's important in any discipline to think about what you shouldn't do just as much as what you should do.
The essence of strategy.
Absolutely. And in this episode, for our listeners, expect to learn and for us to discuss the fear around AI replacing jobs in the future, the apprenticeship paradox and how judgment is built up over time in careers, why AI can't be trusted to make the final decision, and just because it can ingest every framework known to man, it can't be in the room with you and have that experience firsthand.
Exciting. Should we jump in?
Let's do it.
So, to go to the first point, the fear of AI replacing jobs. We're recording this in August 2026, and so a couple of the big networks have just reported their recent set of results, WPP, S4 Capital, and as part of that, or prior to that, both of them had downscaled their staff numbers. They didn't put either of them down totally to AI.
You wouldn't be explicit about that kind of thing, of course.
But there may be some aspects of that. But the reality is there is a lot of fear around AI replacing jobs. That might be a sign to some degree that it is. But if there's fear around AI replacing jobs, Callum, you're working with agencies to deploy AI and adopt AI. Are you helping them to do that? Are you part of the problem or part of the solution?
I hope not. No, that's not my clear objective. That's not my first thought when I help agencies. And just as much as I don't want it taking other people's jobs, I don't want it to be taking mine.
No, true.
And I think that when you think about business margins, if you reduce headcount and increase output, there's profit. Brilliant. But I think you can do this without decreasing the headcount. And it's all about making processes efficient, not replacing people, just giving them a tool to do processes better. I get blown away by AI's utility the more I use it and the more I teach people how to use it. But I also have less trust in it the more I learn.
Why do you trust it less the more you learn? Surely you trust it more, yeah?
Yeah, so ultimately it's hallucinations, which are a big part of these models. And while they appear coherent, they're programmed to. And how these models work, simply, we've discussed this in episodes beforehand, they're completely based on probability. And that probability cannot be a certainty in any case. It is the model's best guess of what goes on rather than fact. It cannot verify that information without someone being there to verify it for them, which is why someone using the tool is so important for that verification step. Yeah. It's the layer on top, like in journalism, the writer or the first drafter of a journal article, the editor would then come on and check the output quality of that thing. And I think that's where humans will sit on top of AI's initial drafts.
So the human in the loop is, in your opinion, important now and is going to continue to be important going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, and I touched on briefly there, these models aren't built to say, I don't know, and get it wrong. Companies almost don't want their models to admit that. And it makes them look bad, like the technology isn't good enough. They are programmed to guess and give their best attempt at what the right answer is, which is why it can fabricate lies and appear very confident in its findings. I think it's analogous to a multiple choice quiz where there's 4 answers usually. It's better to guess if you don't know the answer. And that's what AI does. It gives its best shot.
I've often thought recently that when people say AI hallucinates, that's a common term and thing now, isn't it? But actually, to my mind, it doesn't really hallucinate at all because it can't think.
Yeah, there you go.
So it can't. It actually is. It doesn't hallucinate. It just makes mistakes.
Yeah.
It makes the wrong choice.
Yeah, and it's the way that these models will always be unless the underlying architecture changes. So transformers, the recent architecture, in 2017 or 2018, a bunch of Google researchers got together and made this revelation. That's where we've seen all these LLM chatbots that are so good at interacting and ingesting information and so on. But the underlying architecture is based on probability. And so it will just guess. And a lot of the time it's correct. Most of the time it is. Sometimes it can slip through the gaps and you're not quite sure. I went to a AI networking event when one of the people I was speaking to was talking about exactly this. And in the context of agencies or any business, if there isn't 100% reliability in something, it can't be trusted to work on its own. Because if it processes important information and you just let it go off and do what it wants, you could get into big trouble. That's why these things like agentic softwares like OpenClaw, you hear softwares like this where people buying Mac Minis. It's really hard to let AI just have access to everything and go, off you go. Right, I know you make mistakes sometimes, but do your best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was saying that it was an analogy of credit cards and the technology of the microchips within them. It's been the same, or I think they're making a new change to them recently. But for the last 40 years, they'd used the same technology. Very basic technology, but it worked. And 100% reliability is what we want.
Yeah. So increasingly, us humans need or are relying on the machines.
Yep.
But we're sort of saying that we believe that the machines still need us now for the foreseeable. So, and the human in the loop jobs it's not going to take over.
Yes.
Just yet.
Exactly. With the way that they are right now, I would say it's impossible for them to replace jobs. And there are some, so there are caveats in radiology, for example, that when the human naked eye of looking at sort of X-ray images and detecting sort of malfunctions or some like brain chemistry that isn't quite right, fields like that, AI can manage pixels better than the human eye can.
But even then, it's not taking over a job, is it? It's doing a fundamental part of a job.
Exactly.
For a radiologist or somebody to look at and tell it out. Interesting.
It's better at some things, but we still need to be the ones in control, using it for those things that it's so good at.
Interesting. So, Callum, if we're saying that clearly AI has got massive potential here, is already fulfilling some of it, and it's going to be an even more fundamental part of people's jobs, but not replace, certainly not all of them.
Yeah.
We were talking there about how judgment of the human, whether things are right or wrong, whether things are good or bad, whether the information the AI is producing is useful or not, is still really important, hugely important.
Verification step, of course, yeah.
But a lot of that, unless it's just saying yes or no and a basic judgment call, the AI can probably do that. But if it's a more considered judgment call, it strikes me that the people using AI now, we maybe talking earlier about hospitals using AI to analyze scans.
Yep.
The human in that situation now will be using AI, but they'll be a very experienced medical professional who have done it themselves without AI for many years and therefore can apply their judgment to it. But what happens, do you think, when in some years, fast forwarding a little bit, but not too soon, when the newer generations of the workforce come along and start to use AI natively, of course, but also don't accumulate that expertise, that experience. Don't we often mention it, but we're gym goers. Don't put in the reps, don't put in the exercises. Just come straight in and start using AI. That judgment is not going to be credible, is it?
Yeah, it's almost like giving someone the best shape of their lives immediately, and then going, "Good luck maintaining it."
Yeah,
because they don't know how to get that. It's right. The expertise is so important. It's about accumulating the knowledge of what good output looks like in a specialized field, and because of the nature of kind of engine room work that you'd put juniors into first, it's the ones that have the less or the least amount of error, I would say, in most fields. It's usually quite laborious and manual, perhaps work that senior team members don't want to be doing because they've had their time doing it before. They've been in the coalface.
True, but it's a learning experience going through. It has been for hundreds of years to a degree for humans to do that, isn't it? To gain the stripes on a certain topic.
Exactly. So you need to go through that period in order to build that judgment, to be able to verify what AI's output is and if it's good or if it's bad. There's no possible way of doing this if you haven't accumulated that knowledge. And it's why agencies hand AI the keys to that workflow, because it is the one that's the most simple. I guess this is all about change management, ultimately. And as time has gone on, there's been multiple shifts in society. And one of those was sort of the digital revolution back in the sort of 2000s when MacBooks and email and all this was coming out. And you lived through that in your own agency. And in my eyes, digital or computers didn't replace anyone. Maybe that was the discussion at the time. It seems silly that computers would replace people now. So maybe a little bit about your story in a couple of decades ago of that change.
Yeah, a couple of decades ago. Wow, when you put it like that. But of course, no, during my career, I have lived through that. Despite what I might look like, I didn't actually, when I first started in agencies, which was after university, it was just after, or my first agency was digitised. It was a Mac Studio. It wasn't the drawing boards and the artist drawing boards that people often talk about and some people still experience. I was a little bit after that, but it was at the cusp of that. It was very early days in that sense. So definitely witnessed that in terms of artwork studios becoming digitized through Macs and of course email and all that sort of stuff, digital communication, and then digital marketing, digital marketing tools of course came on board. So I lived through all that, and did it replace jobs? I don't recall it did. It refocused jobs. People had to, if not retrain, they had to sort of refocus on what they were doing and started to do their work in different ways, there were new tools. And it strikes me that, that we went from in that period, a very literal hands-on, going back to the drawing boards and artwork, somebody actually sort of moving pens around and cutting out letters, to somebody using a mouse and a keyboard. And that for many people, that was a big change, but it just created the ability to do more work, more accurate work, cut out a lot of the steps. And I think, AI will do the same. I think the interface is interesting because I think as we're learning, the interface might move from literal hand operated inputs to keyboard inputs to maybe voice inputs.
To voice, that's a big thing. We've learned that using Whisperflow, which we love. So a little shout out to them, of course. You can just prompt quicker when speaking, and it allows you to articulate your thoughts more. So as time goes on, we people in the agency world, in this case, figure out better ways of doing things.
If Whisperflow are out there, by the way, we'd be happy for them to sponsor this podcast.
Oh, of course, yes, please. That would be great. I've signed up to a year already. I've committed myself. And it's interesting because the digital revolution, there was a mouse and keyboard, sure, but it wasn't something that had intelligence.
No.
AI is artificial intelligence, so there's no wonder that people are feeling slightly concerned about the landscape going forward of something we've never had on Earth, something that is more intelligent than us, even if it is just at certain things. Luckily, it gets its intelligence from the things that we've created and put online and the data we feed it. It can just process it very quickly. And I think the crucial lesson here, rather than just having AI and agents running the coalface, which, as we've covered, would be a nightmare anyway, because they'd start getting things wrong. Compile that over multiple years and you've got yourself, or even weeks, little problems here and there can make workflows completely break down. I would say, instead of learning from AI and getting AI to tell you how things should be done, which is just the default average of all the data it's trained on, you should be learning through AI. And in this case, we've talked a lot about context, of course, in past episodes. The senior leaders who have the judgment now and have built up those reps need to be the ones configuring the systems that contains the schema of what they've learned throughout their career. And so when AI and this AI system that you've created, and I say system, it could be a custom GPT or a Claude skill, but you tell it the difference between right and wrong, what good output looks like, what bad output looks like, what to say, what not to say. Of course, it's very related to your workflow. Every workflow is different. There's practically billions out there that's possible.
Yeah, but it is related to that. Because we've got experience, you've got experience live this week. As bizarre as this might sound, you've got to understand your workflow, haven't you?
Of course, that's the big shift.
You've got to be able to describe it, communicate it. You've got to be able to draw it out. And a lot of the agencies that we're talking to, and I'm sure many others, the workflow that they have happens. They do great work. The team produces great work, but it's almost by sort of, it's natural. People don't often have the workflows nailed down and documented. It's the team, the human sort of team working together, and things just sort of happen, and people know what to do, but almost sort of naturally. And if you're we've sort of talked about this a lot this week, if you're going to get AI involved, you've got to go a step beyond that, haven't you? You've got to really scope out your processes and workflows. In
painful detail, may I add. And that's one of the biggest shifts, I would say. Being new to the agency world, I was shocked about how much processes were trapped in people's heads. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. I think a lot of agencies are successful because of that, and they trust their team members who have the knowledge. But with AI as the one that's helping us speed up processes along the way, we need to make sure AI is very clear on what the process is. And I think that's a great topic for a future episode. We could talk a lot about that and the shift in landscape there.
Yeah, we've often reflected, haven't we, on in other industries, non-agency industries, in pharmaceuticals, for example. Those processes have to be clear.
Yeah, nailed on.
You don't produce a drug without being very clear on what goes in it, what doesn't, what happens when, what happens to the testing of it, when it passes, when it fails, who it's passed over to, who signs it off. None of that. That's just, and that's a different. Agencies work with pharma business, of course, but it's just one example. But agencies, it isn't that rigid, and I think that's fueled and perpetuated this sort of things in people's heads, really.
Yeah, and it is an interesting topic, although we will make a future episode about it. I think it stems from risk. You've talked to me a lot before about how in the agency world in general, there are definitely a lot of things that can go wrong. Insurance claims, there's law breaching contracts and losing clients, but in general, no one's going to die as a result, or no one's going to get injured as a result. Whereas in pharmaceutical companies, they have to make the drug exactly how they've designed and tested it, so that nothing or no one gets injured or hurt.
Lives are on the line, quite literally, aren't they?
People's brains are on the line now with AI coming in. That's what we're kind of talking about here. It's important that you use AI to amplify your thinking rather than replacing it, because in 20 years, we don't want to be having a society filled with drones that can't think without having an AI chatbot next to them.
So we've talked there a little bit about judgment and the need for judgment using AI, but there's also, in my mind, there's the sort of decision making itself, isn't there? And that decision making in many in agencies, as we're talking about, that can be based on and often is based on facts, but it's also the nuance of human interaction, and whether those decisions are appropriate for the right stage where that people are in, whether they're the right decision at the right time. And AI, because it's not human, can't make that sort of judgment itself, can it? It can't. It will fail to take into account, for example, the stresses and strains of running an agency. Do we really need to face into this particular decision now when we're very focused on trying to solve this problem over here, or get this piece of client work out the door for 5 o'clock?
Yeah, it's strange, really, because knowledge itself and words, we created them. And humans, it's the idea that humans are only ever going to interact with humans in business, as far as we're aware with where reality sits right now. But we created words, and AI can understand those words and the facts that are our construct, but it doesn't understand people and how we interact with each other. So our brains have evolved for sort of 200,000 years, so the earliest kind of human ancestors. And we've evolved to survive ultimately, but in that process, for evolutionary purposes, understanding other humans was essential to that, whether that's through friendships, starting families, avoiding enemy
Conflicts,
tribes and conflicts.
Yeah.
So our brains are completely designed to pick up on subconscious human cues, whether we're aware of it or not. It's what we're so good at, and we're built to interact with each other. An interesting side note on that is that online meetings can be very tiring, more tiring than in-person meetings.
Yeah.
And the idea of that is because our brains are so used to picking up on subconscious cues, and they're a lot harder to read for a screen.
Yeah.
So when you're with someone, you're reading their body language, their tone of voice, little mini facial expressions. It's better for our brains because subconsciously in the background we're processing them. AI clearly can't do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't understand human emotions. It can read every psychological study on them, but it's never felt fear, anxiety, stress, even kindness, warmth, love, things like this. And that means it can give you advice and present the facts to you about a situation, but it doesn't understand actually how that advice should be applied. It's our job to take the facts and assess it through our knowledge and our lens, because we can understand other people so well.
I'm feeling a bit more comfortable now about the fact that AI is useful, but won't be taking
Exactly.
everybody's jobs overnight.
Exactly. Yeah, it's purely a prediction machine. It's how we created it, and it uses our knowledge, and it's very quick, which is great. But yeah, that's the biggest factor. And I would say, leaning forward, or going forward, agencies should lean into these traits and the idea that AI can facilitate certain processes that would actually dampen those naturally human sort of gifted talents like creativity, strategy, judgment, how personable you are, how friendly you are in meetings and whatnot. It allows us to do more of that while it takes over the more kind of analytical, factual based reasoning.
And that sort of relationship stuff, that's always been a core part of a professional services firm like an agency. That it's been as much as clients buy the value delivered, part of that value is in how they work with an external agency or supplier in this case. So that's hugely important. So agencies are good at that stuff. So we need to, as you say, lean into it.
It's relationships, isn't it? A lot of the client development work that will help agencies with is all about retention and checking up with your clients and making sure all the services are good and if they're okay.
Understanding their stresses and strains, pushing when you can.
Exactly.
Not stepping back a little bit when you know that it's not the right time. All that sort of stuff. Good. So, Callum, we've talked in the past and maybe touched a little bit on today to the fact that we believe AI is the tool, isn't it? It provides output, but the human in the loop, the operator of the tool is still and will remain still hugely important in our view. Everybody be pleased to know.
We've been flattering human egos in this podcast so far. People listening will be glad to know how important everyone still is.
But we need to, as I described earlier in the digital revolution that I experienced in my business, and here's yet another one that has been dropped on us. We need to adapt as humans. We're good at adapting as human beings, so that's good news as well. But we perhaps need to think about how we work, but also maybe how we train ourselves, but also particularly, as we touched upon earlier, our junior people as they come through the ranks. And I know you've got an interesting parallel or thought on that from education.
Yeah, exactly. In a way, juniors coming in are going to naturally be more tech savvy. So it's quite a benefit that they'll kind of be more adept at using AI in this case. I compare AI as a phenomenon to a calculator. It's a tool that processes information. Whatever you input, it then gives an output based on your input. It's the quality. So a mathematician still needs to understand mathematics in order to know how to use the calculator, then it gives the output.
And a mathematician could do far more complicated calculus using a calculator than I could.
Exactly, yeah, because they
because
understand the specialism. They understand the specialism of mathematics as a discipline. Agencies understand their certain niche and what makes a good output and what makes good input, actually, because that's the whole seniority piece that we talked about. These people who have built up the judgment, they know what good input looks like to a problem and a process.
A brief, as I would, well, we still call it, I would call the brief, which is actually, as a prompt, isn't it?
Yeah, it
brief,
is, yeah.
A brief that agencies have used that term for a long, long time, as long as I've been in the industry, is in essence a prompt.
Yeah, so we know how to, so agencies in this case, and particularly the senior people, have the best idea of what a good prompt would look like in their specialism. I remember back to my school days learning maths, and there were two papers. It was mental maths and it was maths with a calculator. It was very separated. Even in the lessons that we had, it was very clear. You know, we even got told to buy calculators externally. You know, they didn't provide them. We had to buy this crazy calculator with all these different buttons on. We still had to learn how to use the calculator. As much as I myself might have been decent at mental maths, if I'd never encountered a calculator before, I wouldn't know how to use it. What is this thing? Yeah. It's the same with AI. You know, you might have the best specialism and the best knowledge in the world. You still need to know how to apply it in the technology. So yeah, I would say that that's the distinction. Agency is the best case scenario. It's about learning the tool. Most importantly, learning how to apply your specific knowledge and get the best out of it and get more efficient processes, better quality. You can spend more time on certain initiatives. And that comes with understanding the kind of do's and don'ts and where AI is good and bad. So, Dad, you're an author, which is amazing. That's something that throughout your sort of career you're always thinking about writing a book, and it's existed now for, what is it, 6 years maybe?
Probably coming up to, maybe 5 years. Yeah. Stand Out. Is this an opportunity to plug the book?
I guess so, yeah.
Stand Out or Die, the book, and about 5 years,
Yeah, and there is a kind of accumulation of the experience that you've learned throughout your career, the lessons you've learned, and it gives people the framework and the guide to approach agencies in the way that you've seen success in how you've gone about your career. And we have systems that have taken, for example, the newest Stand Out framework, you know, although it's Stand Out or Die, it's not strictly the system we've got today, perhaps an update along in the future.
That was version 1 in the book, but we're now on sort of at least version 2. More, but it's the same principle.
So we're updating the system as it goes along, as everyone should. I think that's the nature of AI. AI knows certain things that you ingest into it, but you actually need it to keep it up to date. That's another element, and why juniors accumulating knowledge is so important for the future. But back to the book anyway. I'm intrigued because you've lived that experience and that's your knowledge, and AI can recite it back to you and understand the system. And I'm sure because it's naturally quite sycophantic AI, it's probably praised it very heavily. But how does it make you feel that you're the one who's created the system, but AI can recite it, but it's never kind of sat in the room or lived the experience that kind of made you write it?
No, totally. So, I mean, we have, in our own sort of environment, we've fed in the system, haven't we, of course, into AI and the book, actually. And that's been huge. I can see the benefits of that for us personally, because we can interact with the book almost, or interact with the system which, through AI, which is great, and build on it. And as you've already said, Callum, improve it. So that's a fantastic thing. But I guess how does it make me feel? So I'm positive about that. You could see a situation where actually, if all the experience and knowledge is in there now in AI, does it need me, the author, the originator of that, or does somebody need me, the author? Can you just use AI? Which is a fair challenge, but at present, how do I feel about it? I feel great that it's an extension of the book and we can use it internally that way. But I'm still very positive on the fact that, and bullish on the fact that even if we allowed people, which we may do in the future, to interact with the system using AI, I'm still very bullish about the fact that they would still need or want somebody like me or you or in a different business, another consultant using their own model to interpret, to act as the again, it's the human judgment and human decision making before the judgment or decision making is made, because so there's lots of principles in my book, and you can feed them into AI and you can ask it a question and it will give you the answer based on the system. As we've said earlier, that AI doesn't take into account the human condition, or if I'm working with agency clients, it doesn't take into account their current state of mind, their current whether they're very open-minded to pushing the business forward and looking at new strategies, or whether they're under incredible pressure and from other areas and really need to put out a few fires before they start to look at something which is high on the agenda maybe and really important, but it's not something that they should be prioritising at the moment, because if they take their eye off the ball here, then this sort of new stuff is going to go out. And AI doesn't account for that, does it? It can't.
It lacks nuance. No matter how much data you feed AI, in this case, it only knows about, Dads, your methodology and the facts, the theory behind everything. I've learned throughout my career and education, it's the value is execution, and it's the decisions that you make based on knowledge. Knowledge is just part of the equation. It's actually the person who acts on it is very different in multiple scenarios. So you've had 30 years of living in the agency world and learning lessons that shape the way that you think and behave. That is more valuable than a framework that you've created. The framework's just kind of the output of that, but the source is the biggest value. And to agency owners out there, or anyone in the agency world and who has expertise and have built up credibility and skill among their time, that is the value. It's what you've learned and who you are and the way you think and make decisions. AI can know the facts about a situation, but it doesn't know how to apply the facts, especially since we've covered that it doesn't know how to interact with people, because it doesn't know how people think. We talked before about that and evolutionary biology and how it's all about subconscious cues and interacting with people. We have these neurons, these brain cells called mirror neurons, where when I observe something happening to someone else, I feel what they feel. Their mirror neurons light up and mine do, and it's the cornerstone of empathy. That's how people learn vicariously. You see someone else getting shouted at school, you don't want to feel that same kind of shame and embarrassment that they do. It's empathetic. AI doesn't have any understanding of that feeling of emotion. It can only understand the facts of it. And they're two very different things.
It's like, if you remember Star Trek, it's like Mr. Spock, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without that, the emotions.
Yeah.
It gives you the facts, very clever.
Yeah.
But doesn't have the ability to connect or the emotions to sort of navigate their way through situations. So
and facts. I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm quite an analytical, factual person, but they aren't as important really, because if you can't interact with other people, there's no point in fact. It isn't the basis of human interaction. It's just a part of it. And AI can process that part, and it's great at that part. You should be the one applying that knowledge.
I think that's a great place to finish.
I think so too. Yeah.
Good episode.
Yeah.
Thanks, Colin.
Always a pleasure, Dad. Yeah. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching if you've got this far. You've been listening to Gareth Healy and Callum Healy. Together, we are Agents of Change, which is also our URL, weareagentsofchange.com.
If you want support with growing your agency, including how AI can help you future-proof your business, visit us online to learn more about what we do and find out how to connect with us.